When Donald Trump said he wanted to be a dictator on day one, we told people to believe him because we knew that's what Donald Trump would want to do. Want to concentrate as much power as possible in the Oval Office so he could make him and his wealthy buddies in the biggest corporations in America even richer, all while going after his enemies with impunity. That is Donald Trump's sole focus. More money for his buddies, and then political vengeance. And we saw that second part play out in Donald Trump's visit to his DOJ yesterday, because that is certainly how he sees it. It's not the Department of Justice. It is Donald Trump's Department of Justice. And that was made really clear by one specific statement in which he let us all know who his biggest target is. Pretty much Rachel Maddow. And it is incredibly scary. We're going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we can get into what Trump had to say at his press conference, I actually want to hear the person that we're going to be talking about break it down. That's Rachel Maddow right here.
One of Donald Trump's first acts upon being sworn in as president for a second term was to appoint a new U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. His name is Ed Martin. It quickly became clear what made Ed Martin so appealing to Trump for this term. Ed Martin was at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. He said it was great, said it was like Mardi Gras. He later served as a defense lawyer for several Trump supporters who were charged with attacking police officers during the attack on the Capitol that day. Once Trump named him U.S. attorney in Washington, the top federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C., Mr. Martin immediately set about demoting and firing federal prosecutors who had worked on January 6th cases. He also, honestly, tried to indict Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, an effort so outlandish he apparently couldn't even get Trump Justice Department officials to sign off on it. Ed Martin also tried to get one top prosecutor in his office to order a bank to freeze billions of dollars that had been dispersed by the Biden administration in a federal grant. That prosecutor resigned rather than follow that order from Ed Martin. She resigned because she said there was no crime, there was no legal justification for opening a criminal investigation and thereby freezing those funds. She said he was essentially telling her to fake a criminal investigation, and she wouldn't do it. Ed Martin, after she resigned, then personally signed and submitted a seizure warrant for the funds in that bank account because he couldn't find anybody else willing to sign it. The judge he submitted that warrant to rejected it because, again, no evidence of any crime. This week, Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, asked the Justice Department's Inspector General to open an inquiry into the behavior of Mr. Martin as U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. Raskin's letter outlined all the things Martin has done that he says could potentially deserve investigation by the Inspector General. The list runs to 9 pages, single-spaced, in small type. Ed Martin hasn't even been running that office for 2 months. Democrats in the Senate have also asked for an investigation of Ed Martin from the D.C. bar. And in a development that's surely totally unrelated, I should mention that Ed Martin and Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi are reportedly now moving to try to take control of the D.C. bar themselves. They're doing it very stealthily by having Ed Martin's deputy and Pam Bondi's brother run for leadership roles to take over the D.C. bar. Good luck with that. I'm sure nobody will notice. Is it the Bondi as in Bondi? Yeah, same last name. You might think that developments like this might create a real sense of turmoil, hunkering down maybe, or at least a lot of renewed hard work at the Justice Department. Well, let's look at what Attorney General Pam Bondi has been up to in the midst of this mess. You might recall that last week, Trump signed an executive order to punish a particular law firm because that law firm has done work for Democrats. Among other things, Trump's executive order would block anyone from that law firm from entering federal courthouses, which might make it difficult to be a lawyer in Washington, D.C. I'm just saying. The law firm naturally sued, and because the case was so important to Trump, and potentially because it was difficult to find any career prosecutors who really wanted to defend it, Attorney General Pam Bondi sent her own chief of staff, the Attorney General's chief of staff, to argue the case himself, personally, in federal court.
So while Donald Trump is an equal opportunity critic of the media, of the press, holding him accountable, always trying to bar an outlet from speaking out against him or not using the proper pronouns for his body of water, the Gulf of America. He's been particularly critical of Rachel Maddow lately, saying that her ratings are tanking, and a couple times over the past weeks saying that MSNBC should fire her, that they should be forced to. And now Donald Trump has a new line of attack on what is clearly his least favorite journalist, this right here.
Can't allow yourselves to be deflected. You just can't let it happen. You have such a higher calling. And I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do is illegal. It makes no difference how big a victory I had. I can have the biggest victory in history. It makes no difference what kind of a failure the other side has.
What MSNBC and CNN are doing to Donald Trump is illegal. Now, he didn't specify what, so we can only be led to believe that it's criticizing him that he thinks should be illegal, while standing at the Department of Justice railing against his political enemies who are already on a list of his FBI director. We didn't forget about that. We didn't forget about the Kash Patel enemies list. I'm sure he's already gotten started on that. Truth to Donald Trump should be illegal. Holding the powerful to account should be illegal. But it's not even just that. It is disagreement with Donald Trump that should be illegal. This is a man who has tanked our economy, who has unsettled consumer sentiment, who has fired veterans en masse, tanking the stock market, breaking our alliances, turning his back on 100 years of America's role in the world. But he says America is great, because America is great to Donald Trump when Donald Trump is in charge of America. The press is doing its job when they're supporting Donald Trump. And if they're not, it's illegal. That's what he's made clear. That is his position. And it's terrifying. And Jake Tapper, someone who I guess is also illegal under Donald Trump's view, had a great response to it.
This President Donald Trump, who has long railed against the politicization of the Justice Department, this afternoon came to the Great Hall of the DOJ and delivered one of the most political speeches ever given there by a U.S. president. The president claimed he was, quote, turning the page on 4 long years of weaponization, referring to the Biden years. And then he launched into ways he apparently wants to weaponize the Justice Department against the news media and perceived political opponents. He started, of course, by airing grievances, some of them legitimate, with investigations and prosecutions involving him.
They spied on my campaign, launched one hoax and disinformation operation after another, broke the law on a colossal scale, persecuted my family, staff, and supporters, raided my home, Mar-a-Lago, and did everything within their power to prevent me from becoming the President of the United States.
He then turned to his supportive Attorney General and FBI Director and presented what seemed to be marching orders.
The American people have given us a mandate and really a far-reaching investigation is what they are demanding into the corruption of our system. And that's exactly, I'm sure, what Pam and Kash and everyone else mentioned here and not mentioned is going to be doing. We will expel the rogue actors and corrupt forces from our government.
Part of the orders also apparently include prosecuting those in the news media who do not cover him glowingly.
And I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do is illegal. It makes no difference how big a victory I had. I can have the biggest victory in history. These networks and these newspapers are really no different than a highly paid political operative. And it has to stop. It has to be illegal. It's influencing judges, and it's really changing law, and it just cannot be legal.
It makes no difference how big a victory I had, the president said while complaining about the news media. It has to stop. It can't be legal. Prompting the question, is the president suggesting that it should be a crime for the news media to report accurately that he lost the 2020 election? That, as his attorney general, Bill Barr, stated at the time, there was no widespread fraud that would have changed the outcome? Is that what he's suggesting? This is all of a piece, of course, in his view of the Justice Department, starting just hours after his inauguration when the president pardoned or commuted the sentences of every single rioter who stormed the Capitol on January 6th.
There's been a lot of talk in the Trump administration about who should and should not be in this country based on whether or not they make it a safe place, which is a nice fascist starting point. Talk about anti-American activity, right? And who's a real American, and who this country's for, right? We saw a Republican Congressman Gill from Texas, say that multiculturalism is destroying America, although his wife is Indian and he is white. It's the hypocrisy of MAGA. January 6th is fine. Let those people free. What's really dangerous is truth. It's not a violent attack on the Capitol that we should be worried about. It's people calling out those who pardon the violent offenders. It's insanity, and MAGA can't defend it, as we can see.
Do you think it should be illegal to criticize a judge? And also, I recall President Trump being pretty critical of a couple judges in New York. I mean, wouldn't it apply to him?
Well, Jake, I was at his speech today, and I thought the reporting you're hearing is not at all what I heard. I heard a president who said we're going to get the Department of Justice back to the business of apprehending, prosecuting, and making sure that we have a rule of law in this country. Introduced Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, and I even saw Leo Terrell was there, and Leo, of course, is doing some great work for the Justice Department, investigating anti-Semitism on college campuses, including my own University of Minnesota. But as far as the judges, he was talking about intimidation of judges by others outside, or the lawyers are intimidating judges. I think that's the point he was making, and it was well received by most of the people there.
Let me ask you.
Hey, Tom Emmer, remember when Donald Trump spent the entirety of last summer, really all last year, threatening judges, saying he'd come for them, saying that some needed to put them in their place, all sorts of threats, increasingly had larger gag orders because of, I wish they had put him in prison once for those. You don't remember that? Or you don't seem to care? Yeah, that tracks. That's MAGA. That's MAGA. That's what we're dealing with. And that's what we have to call out. And we're certainly going to on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, and if Donald Trump doesn't put us in jail for speaking the truth, I'll see you soon.